welcome in. We've got Yin Yoga for the earth element, grounded in gratitude. So, of course, it's always helpful to have your props handy, blocks, blanket, cushions, whatever you need. There will be a heart bench at the end of practice. So if you want those things to help lift up your chest, have them ready. But we're gonna start in a seated position. So take a moment, I've got my blanket up under me. Sit up on anything that helps you to be more comfortable. Wiggle your seat around, roll your shoulders back and down. Find that inner lift of your heart and slight nod of your chin. As we drop our awareness, we drop our attention in. In for yin. As you are exhaling, and just imagine your sits bones broadening, growing roots down into the earth. And as you inhale, finding that rebound from the earth below you, that upward lift of the heart, the crown of the head, we might grow a little taller. Exhaling, plugging in to that nurturing stability, earth energy below. As we are breathing the length of our spine, this two-way earth-sky axis, think about breathing into the bottom back and bottom side ribs as we fill up from the bottom to the top. Filling up front, back, and sides of our torso. And as you empty out, just feeling the ribs returning to their neutral, natural position. So a full diaphragmatic breath here. Helping us to tune in, to shift gears from going and doing to simply being. Let's take one more full cycle of breath right here. Setting the intention to stay with these feelings of groundedness, connectedness, and allow them to anchor us here in the present. Grateful for this time together, grateful for this practice. As we blink our eyes open, you might lift the chin a little. Start the breath first. Ribs fill up, arms are gonna follow. They sweep up, we look up, stretch up. And then exhale, go ahead, give yourself a great big hug. So we've got some feedback now. Inhale, breathe into your hands, side ribs. Exhale, turn your head over either shoulder. Remind the shoulders to slide down the back. And we'll stay here for a full breath in and out. Head comes back to neutral. Take note what elbows on top. Inhale to reach on up. Exhale, new top arm. Inhale, really fill up under your hands. Exhale, turn your head, second side. Inhale, we'll unravel, release the arms, reach up, stretch up, look up, go up. Exhale, flex your wrists like you want to push the side walls wider, squeeze the shoulder blades towards one another. And then we'll come forward into table. If your knees need a little support, of course, you can just use a towel or your blanket. And from our tabletop position, once your hands are down onto your mat, the ground, just start to rock your hands from side to side, turning them back, turning them in, and then maybe back on the opposite side. But feeling that rebound effect, again, here through the hands as you're pouring the weight down. And then we'll meet back with the fingers forward or slightly turned out. We'll have our toes curled under and then start to press your hips back towards your heels. Take a breath or two. If we need more weight, more tension, we walk our hands towards our knees. Take a breath or two. We're just having this really intelligent conversation with ourselves, being led and guided by the sensation of stretch. My pinky toes never always make it all the way around, so I just reach around and help them out. Settling in with our toe stretch. So most of us, I think, have our feet on the ground most of the time, sometimes our hands. But finding this active participation with the earth, wanting to keep our feet open and receptive. So we're gonna do a little stretch, and then we're gonna do a smash, some myofascial release, and then we'll stretch our feet back out. If it's getting a little intense, fair. You can always shift some weight forward to back some pressure out. We'll stay just 5 more breaths here. After your next exhale, slowly back the weight, the pressure off. We'll come onto the tops of the feet. You can make it rain if you like. Good. And then we'll do some MFR for our feet. If you have like the yoga tune-up balls or the lacrosse balls and you prefer to use that to roll out the bottoms of your feet, by all means, feel free. Totally an option. I'll show you how to do it with just your feet. We generally take them everywhere we go, so we should have them available. I'm gonna take this very sharp bone on the top of my foot, and what foot you have on the bottom to start is completely fine. I'm just gonna place that very sharp bone onto the bottom foot arch, and then to add tension in, I shift my weight back. And then I shift some weight out, I move it to a new spot, and then I pour the weight back. And of course, you can change the position of your knees. They can be farther apart or closer together, and that's gonna change the angle that you're coming down into the tissue. We'll take a couple more passes. You also get a little bit of release for your adductors up onto the pelvic floor. If you're sitting right back, I'm right on top of my heel. So I get another point of contact there that I find a little intense, but a little bit less intense than sitting on top of the lacrosse ball like we sometimes do. So let's come forward, and you're just gonna trade which foot is on the bottom. So go slow, sometimes it's a surprise. Take a couple more passes. Good, so we took a stretch, we took our smash, and now we're gonna take a stretch again. Let's add into this round and we'll find a lunge. Either foot forward is great. Let's have the back toes curled under so we're opening the foot up again. And of course, if you need blocks, they can be helpful to lift up the floor. Before we settle on in too deep, just lunge a little front to back. And then we'll find that sweet spot. You can have your hands framing your front foot. You can be inside. So we can take it to a version of low flying dragon. We can drop our elbows down on our props or the mat. Just 5 more breaths at the bottom here. And if you've got your elbows down, we'll come back up onto our hands, whether they're on the mat or the props. Big, deep inhale. Exhale, send it back towards your half split. And again, we'll just make it a little flow. Inhale to go forward, led by breath. Exhale to go back. And then we're gonna stay in our half split shape. Again, you can walk your hands back. You could lift them up on props. Usually I give you those options to have the toes down, to pull the toes back. Today I'll say, hey, let's try the version, as long as it's okay with everyone's knees, to pull the toes back. So we're getting a little bit of calf opening here. A little bit more bang for our buck as we're gonna move up the leg in just a moment with some MFR techniques. We'll back off some tension. You can step back through our table, give your hips a rock. You can draw circles. And then we're gonna trade our legs. So we'll have a new front foot, a new back foot. Your hands can be framing or inside. They can be on the earth or up on props. I would suggest that we have the back toes curled under, so we're opening up the bottom of that foot. And we can rock a little front to back before we settle in and commit. We'll find our dragon. We can be high up on our hands or down low. Just finding that Goldilocks zone. We'll stay here for about 60 seconds or so. I've got the time. But trying to keep the tension in the legs, not to jack up the shoulders, to keep the breath full and steady. And noticing the connection of your feet to the earth, your legs to your feet, and your legs to your pelvis. Just one more complete cycle of breath at the bottom. Letting something go. Walk ourselves back to our hands. And then we'll do a couple more little flows in and out. Inhale to lunge. Exhale to shift your hips back. Good. And the next time you're back, we'll hold in our half split for a moment. I would suggest that you pull the toes back, catch your heel on your sticky mat if you're on one. Check in with the back of your knee, of course. This might be helpful to find a little bit more opening through the underside. Last full breath here. Rock a little way forward. We'll step back into our table. And then we can open our knees up fairly wide and support as required. We're going to use our very sharp shin bone. And if you have rolling tools that you prefer to use and they're available, of course, by all means, do those things. But if you don't have those tools available, we have very sharp shin bones that work just as good. So I'll show from the back side. I take my very sharp shin bone and I place it up into the fleshy bits of my calf. And then I start to sit back. And there's no such thing as too deep, only too fast. So go really, really slow, so that tissue has an opportunity to release and to melt. And the same as the techniques with the foot, the feet. You can open your knees wider apart. You can close them closer together to change the angle. If you find a really sticky spot, you might stay for a few breaths. Again, just allowing that time for the release to happen. Taking another pass or two. And then we'll trade what leg is giving and what leg is receiving. It's okay if there's some intense spots, as long as we're breathing. Breathe into and through. Going as slowly as you need to, taking as many breaths as you need in those sticky spots. Just giving those areas an opportunity to let go, whatever it is they're holding on to. And taking another pass or two. And then we're gonna come into Malasana or low squat. You can curl your toes under, just come onto your feet, but really however you need to get there. And you can self-select your feet, how wide apart they are, how turned out the toes and the knees are. If your heels are not making it down to the floor, it's no problem. But then I would suggest that we use some kind of a little shim. Rolled up towels work really nice. So that there's something for the heels to ground down into. And then we don't have to fight with gravity. If you need a little bit of prop, of course, you could be up on your thighs. You could have a seat on something as well. Taking as much time as you need to ease on in. Allowing your tailbone to be heavy, shoulders to slide down the back. You can let your head hang here if it feels okay for your neck and your back. We all have habits and patterns, and that leaves a mark in the body for sure. So I don't tolerate forward folding or deep flexion of my spine. It's just not my preferred movement pattern. So here, where my hip flexors are on slack, I can send a little bit more breath into those places of my back that don't move very easily. So notice for yourself where you're holding tension. See if you can send more of your breath there. Breathing in lightness and releasing tightness. We'll stay just another 60 seconds, another 10 breaths or so. On your next inhale, we'll start to slowly straighten the legs up. And I would suggest we turn our feet in more parallel if you were turned open like me. And keep your knees as bent as you need to. You can have a little shelf for your belly as you waterfall your spine over. If it's not appropriate for you to be upside down or you need more of a half lifted shape, neutral shape for your back, just go ahead and take something under your hands for support. And the feet really grounding down, getting that rebound from the earth below you, supported, stable. You're welcome to play with straightening the legs out any amount. You could also bind your elbows, hand to opposite elbow. That's going to add more weight. So check in. It's not too much traction. Last full breath. Just in this shape, and if you've got a hold of your elbows, let them go. We'll start to bend the knees so we can ground our hands back down. Stepping back to table. Give yourself a moment to rebound, rock your hips around, but any little movement, fidget that your body's initiating, being led by breath. We can cross our ankles or swing your legs around to either side to come back over onto your seat. Extending the legs out long. If you need to elevate your seat up on a prop, of course, feel free to do that. So let's bend our right knee in and just let the knee fall open out to the side. I'll show from this side. Joining the bottom of the foot up with your inner calf, knee, thigh, anywhere is great. But if the knee is kind of looking back at you, we can play with how close the foot is up towards the body. Or of course, we could just give that thigh and knee a little bit of support by tucking our blanket or our towel underneath. So just hanging in space. So we've got kind of a half straddle-ish, half butterfly shape going on. If you're accustomed to this posture in our regular practice, you might need to give your leg a little shake just to remind it's okay if it rolls out, it's okay if it rolls in. As long as it's not causing pain, it's all fair game here. Inhale, we'll sit tall. Exhale, initiate by tilting your pelvis. Imagine going forward. You could lean into your hands. You could build yourself a platform between you and your leg to lay onto. And if it's okay for your back, you can relax shoulders, neck, head. It's very common for people to catch their feet. It's just what we're used to. And sometimes if it isn't good for us to be turning the thigh out, and it's kind of, for me, it's just a natural place to go, it adds that little bumper, right? So it can't really happen. But if you are grabbing your feet, no problem, just resist the urge to pull. So making it as passive as possible while keeping your body safe. So if there's certain things you need to do to keep your spine in a more appropriate alignment for you, all good, all good. Again, just finding equal pressure from side to side on your sits bones. Feeling the tailbone drop, get heavy. And sending more breath where it's needed. Just 3 more full cycles of breath here at the bottom. Inhaling, you can use your hands to climb yourself back out. You can use your hand to help close up your knee. We'll step our feet a little wider than the shoulders, both knees bent, hands pop back behind to give a good push, and then we do our windshield wipe. See if you can link and sync that up with your breath. Notice any differences from side to side. And then we'll set up for our second side. So the left knee can fall open into that more butterfly type shape. And check it out. Sometimes it is a surprise if the knee is up in outer space. Just give it something to lay into. Just give a little shim. Find equal pressure from side to side. Root the pelvis down, finding that rebound up from the earth as we inhale and grow taller. Exhale, tilt from your hip first, and then you can lean into your hands. Yeah. If it's okay, of course, shoulders, neck, head can soften. Just keep checking in with your low back. Make sure it's happy. As we ease on in little by little. And sinking into the posture. And feeling that support from below. Just allowing the earth to do all of the work here for you. One more full conscious breath at the bottom of this shape. As you inhale, using your hands to walk yourself back upright. Using your hands to find your 2 feet back down on the mat. Hands go back behind one last time. Let's take a little windshield wipe, just bringing some movement back through the legs and the pelvis, releasing the low back. We get a little bonus shoulder stretch here too. And then let's set up for our heart bench or supported fish pose. So if you've got a blanket, you can fold it on up or roll it up, and you'll lay it vertical. If you're using a yoga bolster, you can lay it on the vertical. If you're using yoga blocks, I'll show. You can take them, oh, there we go, like a T. The bottom stroke of the T will be on the vertical. It'll be for your spine to lay on, and the top will be on the horizontal. That one is for your head. So they're all good options. Blocks are just a little sharper, and they might lift you a little higher. So if you're on the blocks with me, you'll landmark the bottom tip of the block around the bottom tip of your shoulder blades. And then we nestle shoulder blades on either side. We can support our head with one hand, use the other hand to move the block where it will support. And then we can let our arms fall open. You could have your legs in constructive rest with the inner knees knocking together, the feet nice and wide. You could do the exact opposite thing, find your legs in the butterfly. Or you can have them out long, like Shavasana. And just make sure, especially if you're on the block, bolsters, right, we don't have as much control because they're fairly long. But on the blocks, we just don't want them digging into our low back. Yeah, if you're on a squishy bolster, that won't feel terrible. But it's just helping us to move a little bit more bend into the upper parts of our spine. We might get a lovely stretch across the pec wall and the front of the shoulder. But you can come in and out as many times as you need to find that sweet spot for yourself. And you know when you've got it because it feels really, really good to yield your weight, to surrender. take one more deep, full breath right where you are. Open mouth sigh, let something go. If you're on a cushion or the blanket, you can simply just roll to either side. You'll push it out of your way, come right back down onto your back. If you're up on the blocks with me, use one hand to scoop up your head. Use the other hand, the elbow close to your hip, to press yourself up so you don't have to do a big crunch. And then you'll just move the blocks out. And we'll all meet down on our backs. We'll give that a moment to settle. If it's a little too intense with your legs out long, just come back to bent knee version, constructive rest. Feel the back body broadening and melting as it's being received by the earth below you. Feeling at home in your own body, connected and anchored to the earth, taking just one more moment here to rest. Then I'm going to lead you through a short earth meditation. If you prefer to change your position, if you like to be seated, make sure that you are supported. You could sit up in a chair against the wall. If you're down on your back, you want to grab a blanket or something or reposition your body to settle back in, please do that. As comfortable as possible. We'll close the eyes, dropping the awareness in. In your own imagination, in your own mind, picturing somewhere, preferably outside, in nature, that brings you to that state of awe. It doesn't need to be anywhere that you physically have ever been before. It could just be a picture, a screensaver, a wallpaper on your phone. This place in nature that brings you to that sense of awe, of feeling very, very big and very, very small at the same time. Imagining all of the colors and the textures that would be present there. All of the life that surrounds you. Where the sun or the moon is in the sky and how that would affect the light in the environment. How it would affect the very comfortable temperature of the air on your skin. Noticing any sounds that would be present. Imagining what the air would taste like in your mouth. These places that make us feel very, very big, very, very small, and yet very connected at the same time. Feeling that deep sense of interconnectedness between one another, the collective nature. We start to recognize that there's so much more than just us. And the more we come back and plug in, reconnect, recharge, the bigger benefit we'll have to our own physical and mental well-being, to our personal relationships, our communities, our connection with Mother Earth. And being very grateful for all of it. I'll leave you for a few moments to rest. I'll end the meeting if you're with me on the live. You can just let the video play out on the recording or press pause. I'll leave you with my all-time favorite Hafez quote. Even after all this time, the sun never looks down on the earth and says, "You owe me." And look what happens with a love like that. It lights up the whole sky. We come back and plug back in to recharge so we can go back out and be a more positive force in this world. Gratitude for sharing time and practice. It's always my pleasure, and it's definitely my privilege to get to lead you through. Namaste. Mahalo.